Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is a man who, just like myself, believes that stuffing should be on a restaurant menu everywhere year-round. Here is the captain.
Or you could put that stuffing all over my face. It's good to be seen and good to see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
This week, we are very excited to be featuring Tropicannon, citrus IPA from the fine folks over at Heavy Seas Beer. Tropicannon is a punch to your taste buds with delicious citrusy flavor. This IPA is loaded with blood orange, grapefruit, mango, and lemon. And I think it's the perfect ABV for this IPA at 7.25% garage grade 4 out of 5 bottle caps. And let's give some thanks and praise to our good garage friends that helped us fill up the fridge for this week's set of shows. First up, a shout out to Claudio from Franklin Square, Strong Island, New York.
And a big We Like Your Jib to Tammy Jacobson in Duval, Washington.
Next up, here's a shout out and cheers to Christina Overland from Sarah Gorda, Illinois.
And a big talk hands in the air to Zach from Cave Spring, Georgia.
And last but certainly not least, we have Michaela Finney from Toano, Virginia. Everyone we just mentioned, they went to truecrimegarage.com, clicked on the pint glass, and helped us out with this week's beer fund. And for that, we thank you.
Yeah, BWERUN Beer Run for everything True Crime. Check out truecrimegarage.com and make sure you sign up on the mailing list. And that's enough of the business.
All right, everybody, gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime. This is from the Richmond Times-Dispatch out of Virginia by Times-Dispatch staff writer Andrew Petkofsky. And the headline on page B6 is, Slain Lawyer, a Friend to Many. The start of the article reads, Robert Wone took quiet pleasure in helping other people and working to improve the world. That was clear to many who knew him as a College of William and Mary student leader in the 1990s, and more recently as a lawyer living in Northern Virginia and practicing in Washington, D.C. It was also clear to Sarah Jackson Hahn, who participated in hiring Robert Wone, age 32, as general counsel to Radio Free Asia just a month before he was slain by an intruder at the home of a friend in Washington, D.C. Quote, he felt very strongly that he was actually making a contribution to the cause of free expression, said Jackson Hahn, Radio Free Asia's communications director. Quote, he really felt like he was doing a public service. Wone, who lived in Fairfax County with his wife Catherine, was found stabbed to death just before midnight, August 2nd, 2006. In the Northwest Washington townhouse of a friend he had known since their college days at William and Mary. Police reported the death and its location, and college officials confirmed the residence belonged to Wone's college friend. Initially, detectives were looking into the possibility that a burglar broke into the house and encountered Wone by chance, but investigators told the Washington Post there were no immediate signs of forced entry, and authorities believe that the knife used to stab Robert Wone came from the kitchen. An investigator said police continue to search for evidence. The evidence we have found so far would lead us to believe Mr. Wone was not the victim of some happenstance, said Police Sergeant Brett Parson. Quote, this attack was specific toward him. This is True Crime Garage. This is a very strange case that we have to deal with this week here in the garage. There are a lot of strange angles and even some strange, well, very strange evidence as to what happened or what may not have happened. Now, unfortunately, we know exactly the outcome. A dead, married, and professional young man, 32-year-old Robert Wone. But there is so much more in the way of details, timeline, and especially evidence that we just don't know. And this, of course, has led to not knowing who is responsible for this murder. And make no mistake about it, this is murder. No one says otherwise. The ME, the police, his family, and the persons whose home Robert was murdered in all say murder. But by who? We do not have a great understanding of how everything played out or even the why. Why any of this happened at all. What was the motive for this murder? Now, after I have just spent the last minute telling so many things that we do not know, I tell you this. There is so much that we do know, and I think if we explore this together, some of us may be able to reach our own conclusions. And I said conclusions because I have no doubt that we won't arrive at different conclusions.
This case has been heavily suggested by you, the listener, and I want to thank you for that because this to me is one of the most fascinating cases we have ever looked at.
We have covered a lot of cases. We are over 800 episodes deep now, and I will tell you this. There are some details in this case that we have not seen in other cases before, and that is very rare for us here in the garage. Typically, when we review other cases, we start to see some similarities to other true crime stories that we've reviewed from past episodes. And what is fascinating and intriguing to me in that regard is a lot of times you can take something that you learned in case A and apply it to case B to have a better understanding. Here, as said, we have some details within the timeline and information that is very different from any of the cases that we've covered previously. And it makes you take pause and sit back and go, okay, what do I do with this information? How do I digest it? And how do I come to some kind of thought as to what this piece of information in the timeline or this detail of the case may mean? Captain, my initial reaction to this case, and we have been talking about covering this case for quite some time. As you pointed out, it's been heavily suggested by our beautiful listeners. We have had discussions about this case, brief discussions, since, I don't know, late spring, early summer, when we first started talking about possibly covering this case. One of the oddities with this case, I find, is that when I discuss this case with others, I get two reactions. One, the reaction is, I've never heard of that case. And two, how does anyone not know about this case? One similarity that it does share with many other cases is that complete opposite reaction is often formed simply by where someone is located. So, for example, people living in Virginia or the great state of Maryland or in the northeastern part of the country in general who follow true crime will likely know of this case or even know this case quite well. But once you get in the southern states and the Midwest, just not so much. One thing that stands out amongst others here is that there is no shortage of resources available should anyone want to conduct further examination of this case after we conduct some diagnostics here in the garage. And I highly suspect that you will want to. This is the confounding case and still unsolved murder case of a good young man. Let's give the 10,000 feet above overview of this case. The short of it is attorney Robert E. Wone, who was just 32 years old and recently married, working in Washington, D.C., was murdered at 1509 Swann Street, a very nice townhouse or row house located in Washington, D.C. This is the home of some of his friends. One detail that many zoom in on right away, in this case, is that Robert is a heterosexual man, and the three men that live at this home in which he is killed are homosexual men. On the night of Wednesday, August 2nd, 2006, Robert was staying the night there. Robert, like the others, had to work the next morning. Robert was staying there as he was working late on this night, was due in early the next day, and was hoping to avoid a commute from work and then back to work in the morning. According to the three men that live at 1509 Swann Street, sometime after all had gone to bed, an intruder entered the home. After hearing some noises, they went to investigate, and that is when they found Robert dead, lying in bed in the guest room of the home. None of the occupants of the home could describe the intruder. In fact, they say that none of them saw the intruder. The Swann Street housemates are Joseph Price, Victor Zaborski, and Dylan Ward. At 11:49 p.m., one of the men that lived at the home, Victor Zaborski, called 911. Paramedics arrived before police. Robert was unresponsive, and just a short time later, Robert Wone was pronounced dead of his injuries at the George Washington University Hospital emergency room at 12:24 a.m. on August 3rd, 2006. All right, Captain, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
We have a lot of ground to cover here, my friend. Let's dig in, shall we?
You can do it.
First, a little background leading up to August 2006 and the night in question. We talked about how great of a dude Robert was in the trailer. He was a man that looked for ways to help people. That was a major reason that he studied and practiced law, to help people and to stick up for people. So when we say we lost a good one, we mean we lost a good one. Robert and Kathy Wone were married in 2003, and they lived in Oakton, Virginia. Kathy Wone stated to police that Robert had no enemies that she knew of and that they had no financial troubles. She said that they were happily married and looking forward to a long future together. This next part I love. I think everybody needs a road dog, someone to travel through life with, and it's best when that road dog is your spouse. Kathy and Robert traveled each day to work together into the District of Columbia by way of the Metro. The morning of August 2nd, 2006 was no different. The night of Wednesday, August 2nd, is the night in question. Now, 2 weeks earlier, Robert told his wife that he was thinking of making arrangements to spend the night in the District of Columbia. This would be on the night of August 2nd, and this would be for a good reason. Robert and Kathy were commuting each day into the city for work. They took the Metro. Robert had recently begun a new job. He was the general counsel of Radio Free Asia. He planned to introduce himself to the night shift employees at Radio Free and also to attend continuing legal education courses. That course that he needed to attend was that night in D.C. as well.
And I think we've all been there. You have to work late and then you have to go back home and you might have to be in early in the morning, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And some people go, well, he had money, so he could have got a hotel, but he also had a lot of friends in the area, so he's going to make arrangements with his long-term friend, Joe Price, to stay at their place just a couple minutes from where he's working by taxi cab. So it's going to be a quick trip, go over to your buddy's house, spend the night, wake up in the morning, get back to work.
So Robert told his wife that instead of making that commute back to Oakton after all of this, as the captain said, when you think about it, makes sense. An early commute to a job you care so very much about, an evening with continued education class, and a meet and greet that you set up with the night crew at work, and then commuting back just to wake up early and commute in again. No, and no thank you. And some reports state that Robert had to be in earlier than normal the next day. So if that's true, then he wouldn't be traveling with the road dog, right? He wouldn't have his companion with him for the way home that night or the way back into work the following morning. So Robert figured he'd just reach out to some friends. And I think that this might be a little bit of key into trying to peek beyond the curtain and see what might be going on, or at least that we can try to surmise what was going on here. He reached out to some friends to see if he could stay with one of them in D.C. the night of August 2nd. He actually contacted two longtime friends. One was a man just a couple of years older than Robert. His name, like the captain said, is Joseph Price. Robert also contacted another friend, a female friend, to see if either could house him for the night. Both friends he had known from their years together at the College of William and Mary. Joseph Price responded via email that he would be happy to have Robert stay with him and his housemates at 1509 Swann Street. Then on July 31st, 2006, Joseph and Robert emailed back and forth a little bit the plans that Robert would arrive by taxi around 11 p.m. after his visit with the late shift employees at Radio Free. Reminder, Robert's wife, Kathy Wone, knew and approved of her husband's plan to stay with Joseph Price and his housemates on August 2nd, 2006. Okay, that is the setup here for about what is to take place. That's the plan according to all parties: Robert, his wife, Kathy, Joseph, and his two roommates. On August 2nd, 2006, Robert and Kathy got ready for work. They took the Metro together to their normal stop, and just like any other morning, they kissed goodbye before parting ways. This is at Connecticut Avenue at about 8:45 a.m. Kathy never saw her husband alive again after their morning commute. Robert then went on to have a normal day at work. After work, Robert and a colleague attended the continued education class. At 9:15 p.m., Robert left the seminar. At 9:30 p.m., Robert called his wife to tell her that he was en route from his evening class back to the Radio Free Asia offices to meet with the night crew. Many of the timelines I have seen state that he also called his wife to say goodnight on this same call. He arrived at Radio Free, located at 20th and M Streets Northwest, at 9:40 p.m. And after meeting with employees there, he then called Joseph Price from his work desk at 10:24 p.m. This to say, hey, I'm getting ready to leave. I'm on my way to your place.
So Robert had many options because he had many friends, but this is a great option for him because it's very close. It's going to be a less than 10-minute cab ride over to 1509 Swann Street.
And we might have to circle back to this later when we get into some of the details, because the police were a little suspicious of, well, why wouldn't he just head back home? And I think we've gone through that enough to say that this seems to be his intention. He had to work late. He had to be back in quite early. He couldn't travel with his wife either way. And look, he's probably just trying to cut a little bit of a corner to be very professional and be very dedicated to his job on this night and the next morning. The timeline that I'm looking at here, Captain, this is from whomurderedrobertwone.com. It's a fine website. It looks like they've posted a lot of stuff over the years. Some of it may have been taken down over time as this investigation has really drug on. But this timeline seems to be the most accurate, and it's very pinpoint to the minute here. So this timeline says at 10:30 p.m., Robert Wone arrives at 1509 Swann Street. Around 10:45 p.m., Robert is chatting with Joseph Price and Dylan Ward. They're drinking water. He, at some point around this time, 10:45, he goes to take a shower and goes to bed. Now, we can hear Dylan Ward being interviewed by police later describing that evening. And Dylan Ward is telling police very similar to what this timeline says. He says, we were hanging out in the kitchen. We were all standing around the sink, the three of us, and we were sipping water. And he does mention that at some point, Joseph Price believes that he's seeing something. Maybe it's a spider or some kind of bug, and he steps outside. This would be through the back door that is off of the kitchen. Then he returns, and when he returns, Robert says something like, I've worked a long day. I'd like to grab a shower before bed. So they show him upstairs to where he will be staying. It's referred to time and time again as a guest room. It's technically a study that doubles as a guest room. This is a very nice house, and we'll get into the details of the house. But he's staying essentially in a study, a room that is primarily used as a study or a den, that has a pull-out bed couch in this room. So he's going to be sleeping on that bed and have this entire room to himself.
I think one of the tough things when a case becomes so talked about, and maybe not by, like you said, some people never even heard of this case, but it's a case that once you've heard of, you have to do some digging. You have to go down some rabbit holes. So we have Joe, Victor, and Dylan living together, and there's a dynamic there. So Joe and Victor, they are husband and husband. And then Dylan has a relationship with Joe, but it seems based off of I don't even know if you want to call them interrogation, but the questioning after the crime, that there's a relationship between Joe and Victor. They're married. There's a relationship between Joe and Dylan, and they're working on creating a relationship between Dylan and Victor, but it's not really happening.
Yes, and I think that's key to try to analyze that. I don't think that we're going to try to pretend to understand. It's just like with a husband and wife relationship or boyfriend-girlfriend, boyfriend-boyfriend relationship. It's difficult for us here in the garage with any relationship to try to fully understand the dynamics within the four walls of any household.
Yeah, but this is also proof that these individuals are crazy, because it's crazy enough to have one partner. I couldn't imagine the stress of having two partners.
I thought about that. I don't think I could find two people to put up with me.
Right.
Maybe I can brainwash one person.
I'm the problem.
Right.
I'm just wanting to put that out there. I'm the problem.
I'm the one that should be sleeping at the homeless shelter.
Yeah.
But so you're exactly right, Captain. From my understanding, it's that, because this has been referred to in many different ways as a threesome, a trouble. But then there's also people that have said, no, it's a 2-on-2, a one-on-one relationship, and then another separate one-on-one relationship. What's key, though, here for the layout of the house and for what's going to turn into, unfortunately, a crime scene, is that Joseph and Victor share a bedroom up on the third floor, what we would call the third floor. Dylan has his own room, and his room is on the second floor.
The same floor that Robert's going to be sleeping on.
Exactly. Robert Wone will be sleeping on floor number 2 at the study/guest room. I do want to point out something here before we move too far, and I don't think this is a big deal, but just because there's so much information out there and there are so many ears that have already listened to and eyeballs that have reviewed this case, I want to go full circle here, because there are some timelines that I've reviewed that state Victor Zabrowski did not know. So he returns home rather late that day. And in those timelines, he is unaware that Robert Wone is staying the night that night. He kind of gets told that when he returns home.
Right.
And in those timelines, he goes to bed, or at least upstairs to their bedroom. He retires to his bedroom before Robert even arrives at the home. In other timelines, Victor is downstairs when Robert arrives, but shortly after retires to the room. What we do know is Victor goes upstairs at some point to his bedroom and watches TV. And we do know that the other 3 men, Robert, Joe, and Dylan, are downstairs alone, the 3 of them in the kitchen. This according to Joseph and according to Dylan.
Now, there's some people in law enforcement that don't buy this story. They think you had arrangements weeks in advance to have your friend come over. These 3 men love to entertain, that it wouldn't be a situation where that Robert would just come over and want to go right to bed. I think, one, I don't understand why they make this argument or make these comments, because I've worked with several people where I have to stay the night at their house, maybe after a show or before a show or after a recording session. And if it's been a long night, we might not stay up all night drinking and partying because we have to wake up very early the next day. So sometimes it's get home, all right, time to go to bed, see you in the morning. So I just don't understand why some people in law enforcement or some people online have speculated that this is a complete fabrication of the start of the night.
Well, the thing is, we only have the word of the 3 men that lived in the home, and then the word of Robert's wife, Kathy, who I have no reason to not believe that Robert told his wife the truth. But can I guarantee it? No. And I don't think that this is just within law enforcement. I think it's with any line of work, or really maybe this is more of a male thing, and I can't speak for the fairer sex out there, but I think maybe with some men, they have a very difficult time trying to understand or wrap their heads around the idea that a man with a wife at home would go and stay with 3 homosexual men for a night.
Right.
And we know that. We're not putting words into their mouths, because we know that based off of the questioning. I don't want to call it an interrogation. It seemed to get loud and heated at times, but it didn't feel like an interrogation to me, the parts I was able to review. But you can tell that police keep bringing that up in their questioning of each of these individuals. Well, why would Robert even want to stay with you guys? You must have been going to have some kind of party that night.
Right. Or they speculate that Robert must be homosexual as well, because why would a straight man stay with 3 homosexuals? And some people speculate that these cops were homophobic, and then law enforcement has said they're absolutely not homophobic, but they were posing questions in a way to try to rattle these 3 individuals.
Yeah, and that's a technique that it oftentimes pans out. If somebody is sticking and walking the line of a narrative, you're trying to bounce them off of that narrative. You're trying to upset them and get them to react to you and say something that maybe they did not want to say. So I understand the tactic here. But one thing that I think that we should point out, we don't know the full intent of everybody there that night, and that will be clear very soon. But the thing I think is worth pointing out, Robert's an extremely professional man, as is Joseph and Victor. Joseph is very successful. He's an attorney himself. And Victor, from my understanding, was like the point man for the Got Milk campaign. Like, he's traveling for work. He's got a big job. He's got a big salary. He wears a suit every day to work. Dylan has a bunch of different jobs. But I think the thing that we need to keep in mind when we're reviewing this is that at this point in our timeline, the way it looks to me is we have 4 men, 3 that live together, 1 that's visiting for the night. And of those 4 men, 3 of them are very professional / successful individuals who I would believe are all going to go to bed at a reasonable hour, because they all have very good jobs that they need to hustle off to in the morning.
They're all in their early to mid 30s, successful, motivated individuals. I think it would be different if they were all in their early 20s and just had...
Or a bunch of lackeys.
Yeah, or had jobs that they didn't really care about. These guys didn't have jobs. They had careers.
Yeah. 3 of these guys had jobs that all of us would love to have. Would love to be skilled enough to have those jobs and be successful at them. So at this point, what we have is 3 men. Remember, Victor is in bed upstairs, whether he's in bed before Robert arrives or very quickly after. He's up there watching a show. According to everybody's information that they've told to police, Joseph arrives up in the bedroom, retires to the bedroom with Victor, and Victor's still awake watching the show, but, getting ready to fall asleep. Things are going to, if we are to believe that things played out this way, things are going to start to happen very quickly, because the thing that makes this case so damn difficult for me, Captain, is such the short window of time that a lot of things, no matter who you think is responsible, there's so much stuff that had to go down in such a short window of time before the paramedics and police are on the scene. According to the reports, Robert takes a shower. He's brought an overnight bag with him. He gets into his what is described as normal sleeping attire. This is a gray William and Mary t-shirt and a pair of shorts. He retires to the guest room. Again, it's a fold-out couch that he'll be sleeping on that night. And at the same time, we have Dylan, who says that he's gone to his room, and some of the reports state that he took a sleeping pill and then read for 5 minutes and dozed off. Other reports say he read for a few minutes, then took his sleeping pill and dozed off. Either way, according to him, he did some reading and he took a sleeping pill. Now, that all takes place at about 10:45 p.m., maybe 5 minutes after, according to the people that live at this home. Now we have this crazy window of 11 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. where we don't really know what happened. So during this time, we have Joseph, Victor, who say that they heard a door chime. They heard noises, and then they went down to the second floor. So let's examine. The door chime, what they're saying is they have a security system. Shout out to Simply Safe. They have a security system, but it sounds like they didn't set the alarm that night.
I think they had a system that wasn't really connected. I don't think their alarm system was connected to an outside source.
What you're saying is it wasn't a monitored system. So you're not paying the monthly fee for it to be monitored. But what happens if you purchase a home and there's already an alarm system there, for those that are not familiar, it's kind of cool even if you're not having it monitored. So there, like if somebody breaks in, there's nobody monitoring the system to notify the police or notify the fire department if the smoke detectors go off. But if you have an existing system, you still get the little chirps and chimes and noises that the different systems make. And what they're referring to here is the door chime, is that when that door breaks from the frame, when it comes open, swings open, it will make a noise. Some will make a chime, some do like a doorbell type sound. I know that mine will make a chime and then it says what door was open, garage door open. And it's usually not particularly loud because you don't want it to be a disturbance, a constant disturbance. But they're saying that at some point between the minutes of 11 p.m. and 11:30, they hear a door chime, followed by noises. Some have described these noises as grunts or gurgles or murmurs. They're not real clear on what they hear. They go downstairs to the second floor, and that is when they discover Robert Wone's body.
All right, we are back. Tall cans in the air. Cheers, mates.
Cheers, mates. I got 2 tall cans in the air, one in each hand. Mm-hmm. Here's where things get a little dicey. All right. And I want to be clear here. The details that we've gone over, after Robert Wone arrives at their home, there's no question about what time he arrives at the home. We have the taxi cab information to tell us what time he drops off Robert. Everything that happens once he enters that home, we're only getting that information from the 3 guys that live there. Unfortunately, if Robert could tell us what happened, we wouldn't have a story to tell.
Right.
So all of this could have went down completely different than as described. Now, one thing that I think is in question here, I've seen different timelines. I've heard the police speak about this. I've heard attorneys speak about this, and I've heard a judge talk about this. No one seems to agree 1,000%. There was a single scream at some point. At times, it's suggested that the scream was heard by Joseph and Victor before they run down to the second floor to investigate.
Yeah, implying that the scream would be coming from Robert.
Robert, or this would be weird if some stranger who attacked Robert did the scream, but nonetheless, they say they hear a scream. The other way that this is described, and this part is so damn confusing for me, Captain, is some of these timelines state that Victor is the one that screams a single scream when he finds Robert. When he walks in with Joseph and sees this shocking event, oh my God, our friend's dead on the bed, that he's the one that screamed. What's interesting, though, is we have confirmation from neighbors about this scream. They, of course, don't know who made the scream, but we have a neighbor that states, I heard a single scream as well, and it was around the same time, 11 to 11:30 p.m., because remember, this is a row house. They share a wall. It's like an apartment, if you will. You have your living space, but you have a shared wall on one or both sides of you that somebody may hear noises.
Yeah, and I think there's two ways to look at it. Some people think that Joe and Dylan were doing something to Robert, and then Victor stumbles upon the scene. Then other people say, well, if they believe that these guys are innocent, that, well, they heard the chimes, they woke up, they ran down the steps, they saw the body, Victor screams.
Well, that's why this case is so tricky, because you have other folks that will say Dylan did something on his own, or that all three of them did something to or with Robert.
There was a great blogging trio that covered this case, and during the documentary, one of them said that this is a puzzle that you have to put together, but some of the pieces are missing and some of the pieces are lying to you.
And do not turn off this podcast. Not now, not ever. But I recommend that even if you listen to, and after listening to both episodes, if you have Peacock, go and watch the 2-part docuseries.
Yes.
It feels like a quick watch because it's very engaging. The thing that's difficult for us here as true crime storytellers, if you will, in this moment, because this isn't a case that we've worked firsthand, the difficult part for us is there are pieces of this case that almost require visuals for you to have a better understanding. And I think that documentary did such a darn good job of including the necessary visuals at the necessary times when telling this true crime story.
Well, hopefully in the next couple months, we're going to do an episode and update our list of best true crime documentaries of all time. And I will be putting this documentary on my list.
At 11:49, we have the 911 call. Now, anybody that knows this case, this 911 call is infamous by this point. But before we get to that, we have to mention that in our timeline, and this is key because remember the time in question here seems to be 11 p.m. to 11:30 when we have Joseph Price and Victor Zaborski telling police at some time during that half an hour, we heard the door chimes, we hear noises, and that prompted us to go downstairs. I don't believe that could have been at 11 o'clock because either they're completely lying or it was after this marker on our timeline, because at 11:05 p.m., there are 2 emails composed but not sent to Robert's wife, Kathy. All right, so we get a email at 11:05, and then there's an email to a colleague at 11:07 on Robert's BlackBerry. Again, the information we have is that those emails were composed but not sent. What is not in question is this next marker on our timeline. At 11:49 p.m., Robert Zaborski calls 911.
DC Emergency 911 operator 6752. Do you need police, fire, or ambulance?
We need an ambulance.
What's wrong, ma'am?
We had someone that was in our house, evidently, and they stabbed somebody.
Okay, somebody's inside the house now?
I don't know. We heard.
Are they bleeding? You see someone bleeding?
Someone is bleeding in our house.
Okay, where's they bleeding from?
I think in the stomach.
In the stomach? Is he conscious? Calm down for me. I'm going to send some help, okay? Female or male?
It's a male. He's a friend of ours. He was spending the night with us.
Okay, and who was the person that stabbed him? Do you know? Is he conscious?
We need an ambulance.
Ma'am,
he's not conscious.
He's not conscious at all?
No. We need someone right now.
Is he breathing? Listen to me. Calm down. I'm going to help you, okay? Is he breathing?
I'm upstairs, and he's downstairs. I don't know.
Okay, who's downstairs with him?
My partner is downstairs with him right now. He told me to go upstairs and call the police immediately. I just went to the stairs.
Okay, who's the person? Okay, I'm sending paramedics and the police. Okay, who's the person that stabbed him?
I don't know. We think it's somebody with an intruder in the house. We heard the chime at the door.
And it's 15, ma'am, calm down. 1509 Swann Street, Northwest. Am I correct?
Yes, it is.
The person that said them, is she still in the home?
I don't know.
We got help en route, okay?
Pardon me?
We have help en route.
Thank you. They're here.
They are en route to you now. I'm saying the police and the paramedics, okay, to assist. Okay, what I need you to do is go downstairs, okay? The place wherever he was stabbed at, I need you to get a dry cloth, okay? And just apply pressure to that area. If he was wherever he was stabbed at on his body, I need you to take a towel downstairs while you're waiting for the paramedics to arrive and just apply pressure. Even if the rag or towel is saturated with blood, just get another towel and put it on top, but never lift the first towel off the area. Hold it on. Once it gets filled up with blood, just put another towel on top of that and just apply pressure until the paramedics arrive. Yes.
On the ledge.
Yeah.
With stab in the heart.
In the heart?
Yes. In the center of his chest.
Okay. Is he breathing?
Is he breathing?
We have help en route now, okay? You don't know who it was?
No idea. Don't touch this.
Okay, is he breathing?
He's breathing, but he needs help now.
Okay, we have help en route, ma'am, okay? We do have help en route. Okay, just go down there and try to tell your husband or your the other half to just try to keep him calm and talk to him, okay? Keep him calm and talk to him until someone gets there.
Okay.
And at the same time, get a dry cloth and just hold it right there in the area.
My partner's holding the
holding
it on him.
Okay, and once it gets saturated with blood, tell him get another one. Go get another towel so you can apply it on top of that one once it gets filled up with blood. We need you to apply pressure on that area.
He is applying pressure right now.
Okay, just hold it there until the paramedics get there. They should be pulling up any moment if they're already en route to your location. You don't know who did this.
We have no idea who did this.
Is the door open so they can get in?
We don't know how they got in.
Okay, well, I'm asking you now, is the door open so the paramedics can get in once they get here?
What? Sorry. What were you saying?
Is the door open so they can get in? Is the door open so the paramedics can get in the home?
I'm going to go down.
Is this a private home or apartment?
It's a home.
It's a home. It's 1509 Swann Street, Northwest.
The person had one of our knives.
The person that stabbed him ran out the door with a knife?
I think so.
Okay, anybody get any type of description of the person that came in the home?
I have no idea. We have no description. We heard the chime, and we heard the scream from our friend.
Okay.
And so we came running downstairs. We ran in.
So you both was upstairs and your friend was downstairs?
Yes.
You heard the door open and then you heard the scream?
I didn't hear the door open until after the scream, and then we ran down the stairs and we heard we have an alarm, and so the chime went off.
Okay.
Is the ambulance? We really need the ambulance.
Okay, they en route now, ma'am. Go to the door. They should be pulling up any moment. Okay.
I'm afraid to go downstairs.
Okay, the person who's downstairs was the person that was assaulted.
No, we're on the second floor.
Okay, so somebody need to go downstairs and open the door for the paramedics. You're not sure if that person's still in the home or not.
I have no idea.
Okay, we have paramedics en route, okay?
What time is it?
What time is it at the moment?
Yes.
23:54. It's 11:54, ma'am.
54.
Yes.
I mean,
I'll stay on the line with you. I will stay on the line until somebody gets here, okay? I won't hang up.
we need them right now. I'm not hanging up, but we need help now.
Okay, they en route, ma'am. They are en route. Let me know when you hear the paramedics. Can you look out the window and see if you hear them coming?
I'm looking out the window and I see nothing. I see nobody.
Okay, it seems like forever, but they are en route, ma'am. They're coming.
Here they are. Here they are.
They're there.
I'm going downstairs.
Okay. I'll stand in line with you till you open the door for the paramedics, okay?
Help us. We have someone with stabbed. They're on our second floor.
Ma'am?
No, it's really an emergency. I mean, he's hurrying.
Ma'am, it's going to be okay.
So some of that is hard to understand. We cleaned it up the best we could.
Captain's like an audio janitor.
Yeah.
I mean that in the highest regard.
Hey, I accept. I threw my mop down on the floor.
And by judging of the size of your key ring that you have there.
Has many keys. Curious about your thoughts, because I have many on this 911 call.
Yeah, so pass the penny to me. I'll give you my thoughts, and I'll pass that penny back to you. One thing that I think is key there is, first off, a shout out to the emergency services worker who is giving potential life-saving efforts and ideas to the man on the phone. And she's trying to say, this is what you got to do. We got to stop that bleeding. We got to stop that bleeding. The paramedics are on their way. So kudos to her, because she's attempting to help the situation the best she can via a telephone.
Yeah, and I also love the way she says "bleed."
That's cool. I'm going to start doing
so it
that.
can stop the bleed. And I also like the fact that she keeps calling him ma'am, right?
Well, yeah, he does have a higher octave type voice, and he's either, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. He's either a fairly decent actor, or he's incredibly stressed out and panicking,
Right.
and maybe his voice is even higher than normal. You've heard me when the podcast starts going bad and I'm not on mic and I get way up here like this. What's going on?
But I also think it shows a little bit of Victor's character and how he is treating her, because he clearly has to. I mean, look, we know he's in a panic state, but she calls him ma'am over and over. And we've heard other 911 calls where they say, "Hey, ma'am, you need to calm down," or try to calm down. And then the person reacts, I'm not a ma'am."
Oh, and one of our listeners, please email or hit us up on X, because for the life of me, I kept trying to figure out what case was that. Because in that case, it's very different, where the man is calling in, he's panicking, his voice is quite high. The 911 operator refers to him as ma'am, I think more than once, and it's on the second time where his demeanor completely changes, where he's like, I'm a man. I'm not a,
Right.
He goes right into anger mode. But so to be clear here, he's either truly panicking or it's a put on. But one thing that I think is very interesting, because we went over the timeline leading up to this 911 call so far. And one thing that's in question amongst the timelines out there is the scream. Where did it come from? Who did the scream? And his statement there that is recorded, so he's locked and loaded on this statement. He says, "We heard a scream, then we heard the door chime, then we went downstairs." So by that version, Victor Zabrowski's version on the 911 call, the scream happened before the door chime. And the scream happened before he and Joseph went downstairs. Therefore, he can't be describing his own scream.
Correct. I agree with you. And I think when she talks about making sure the door is open for the EMTs, his reaction of, "I don't want to go downstairs." Like, I'm scared to go downstairs. There's a part of me that believes Victor, and at this point, I don't know if Victor knows what actually happened. I know law enforcement says he uses terms like "we," but it's like, I don't think that is that crazy to say to somebody, because you are with people. So we heard the chimes, we heard the screams.
Well, of course he would say that because he's lying in bed with another person.
Right.
And what I think what he's implying there is, again, if it went down as he's describing, because It could all be a lie. But if it went down as he's describing to the 911 person, that we heard a scream, meaning we both, you wake up from your sleep, or you rise up in bed and what was that? Did you hear that? Yeah, I heard that. That was a scream. So we heard a scream seems appropriate. I think that's one thing that's a little tricky here, though, is remember that chime would take place when the door breaks from the frame, when the door opens. So if it goes down as said here on this recording, scream, door chime, we went downstairs. If it was only one person that came into the home and did whatever happened here, killed your friend, that door chime after the scream might be indicative that that person has left the house.
And I think it's also confusing to me because he's saying we think the intruder has one of our knives.
Yeah.
But if he was telling the complete truth, he would have went downstairs with Joe.
Yeah.
They would have seen the knife, either because Joe changes his stories, and we're going to get to that. But Joe's initial story was the knife was laying on his chest, on Robert's chest. So he would have seen the knife. So why is he speculating that the intruder has their knife? That's a little strange to me. But then Joe changes his story and says, well, actually, it wasn't on his chest. I pulled it out of him. Well, that's something you would definitely remember seeing. And also, it's very strange that Joe changes his story on this point because, like law enforcement and the prosecutor in this case points out, that is not something that's an action that you're probably going to remember for the rest of your life.
You may not remember retrieving a knife off of a person's chest or stomach in the heat of the moment. If you pull it out of a wound,
yeah,
you're remembering that whether you want to or not. And for most people, they would not want to remember anything like that ever again. And I think that regarding Joseph's statements or changing statements about where the knife was when he entered the room, still in the victim or lying on the victim, I have no idea why he would change that story. I've looked at it a million different ways, wondering what would be the purpose of stating that. The only purpose in changing your story would either be A, that you want them to have a complete understanding of the truth because you want them to find the person that did it. You're trying to assist in getting some justice for your poor friend. Or B, you're changing your story to cover up or make sense of some evidence or explain away some evidence that they may find later. The troubling thing here is both ways he's saying he picked it up and handled the knife. So if you're trying to cover up them knowing that you had the knife in your hand at any point, you've not done that because both of the stories put the knife in your hand. The thing in regard to Victor and some of his statements, I think that there's a strong chance, whether he knows exactly what happened or partly what happened or none of what happened, and he's totally just scared and wondering what went on, there's a chance that wherever that knife truly was, he may not have exactly seen that, because the way that I understand it, Captain, it's that Joseph is explaining this later and maybe explaining it to Victor and Dylan as well. So let's zoom in here and highlight a window on our timeline. Remember we said sometime between, it would have to be, this timeline on whokilledrobertwone.com is great, but really, truly, it would have to be sometime between 11:08, after these emails were composed on the BlackBerry, and 11:49 when the 911 call is placed. That is when Robert Wone was stabbed 3 times in the chest and abdomen with a knife. And yes, the knife that is found on Robert is a knife from the knife block that came out of the kitchen there from that house.
What these 3 individuals are kind of implying, if you lump them all together on the 911 call, what they're implying is an intruder broke into the house, took our knife from the kitchen, went upstairs, went past Dylan's room.
Correct.
Went into Robert's room. And a question that I've never been able to find is, were both doors shut, or was Robert's door open? But they want us to believe that the intruder passed Dylan's room, went to the other side of the bed, and we'll dive into that evidence more, stabbed him 3 times, perfect stab marks, no movement from Robert whatsoever.
Yeah.
Left the knife inside him or on top of him and then left. And then they called 911. It just seems very strange.
Okay, so let's go into this here. We have, as stated, stabbed 3 times in the chest and abdomen with a knife. The wounds were unusually uniform in dimension, orientation, and depth. Meaning, like what the captain said, in short, they're damn near identical, which is very difficult to do for a number of reasons. Robert Wone was, for reasons that are not explained or unexplainable, especially if this is the real scenario, he didn't move. He was immobile the entire time that he was stabbed 3 different times. So one stab wound perforated his heart at the aortic root and transected his left anterior descending coronary artery, causing acute cardiac tamponade. And I'm sorry to my deepest apologies to the medical community. I did not say that last word correctly, but from my understanding, what that means, I did a little bit of work on what this type of injury how it would play out. This is something to keep in mind here. With an injury like this, that effectively shuts down his heart, but it shuts down the flow of blood as well. It causes the blood to not be able to pump. And the medical information that I have reviewed says that the victim would be unconscious within 60 seconds of this type of injury. However, it makes no damn sense to me that he's stabbed lying. So he's found lying on top of the sheets, right? He's not under the covers. Robert Wone is lying on his back. Again, he's wearing his gray college t-shirt with shorts. He's laying on top of the covers. He's stabbed in these 3 almost uniform, identical stab wounds. And the information that the medical examiner and even the paramedics that were first on the scene were saying he wasn't moving. For whatever reason, he was not moving. Now, some people could say, well, he was asleep, but your body's naturally going to react, right? You're going to recoil, or you're going to wake up and try to defend yourself. For whatever reason, none of that happened.
Yeah, and this becomes very complex and confusing because also we don't know where he was stabbed first. And so even if he was stabbed in the heart first, we should see some sort of blood splatter. So that to me doesn't make much sense at all. And so what law enforcement leans towards is the idea that he was drugged and basically in a coma type state. And so if he was drugged by somebody and if he was drugged by somebody and he was overdosing on this, that could have slowed down his heart rate to the point where there would be no, like I said, blood spatter or splatter. And
let me take it a step further here, Captain. So this is the first part of the whole damn story that makes me go, the things that make you go, This is the first thing that makes me go, because, right, it's correctly pointed out by many people, he should have had a reaction. We should see some kind of reaction by his body, whether he was asleep or awake or woke up just a split hair second before he stabbed. That we don't see that in the wounds. That would be an indicator on the wound that he was, as said, knocked out in a comatose-like state. He wasn't responsive or conscious when he was stabbed. I'll take it a step further. I don't even think he was stabbed on that bed. Okay, because, all right. Anybody here trained in CPR? I am. I've taken several CPR classes. One of the things that they teach you at CPR classes, and or if you've not taken any CPR classes, when you call 911, the thing that they tell you too, if you're trying to administer CPR to somebody that's lying on a bed, the first thing they tell you is get them off of the bed if you are able to, because you cannot administer CPR to somebody that's on a bed. There's springs or there's give. There's an earthquake effect that takes place. So even that stab, to have 1, 2, 3, and they're identical, even if he's not moving, the damn bed in itself is going to cause them to be, there's going to be there's going to be different marks and angles to those wounds if they're in succession, rapid succession, because of the earthquake effect simply of him lying on the bed. That doesn't take place. And look, if he wasn't stabbed on the bed, then their story doesn't make any damn sense. From there, we know that Robert Wone was pronounced dead of his injuries at the George Washington University Hospital emergency room. This is at 12:24 a.m. on August 3rd. Now, around that same time, we have Joseph Price, Dylan Ward, and Victor Zaborski that are transported to MPD for questioning. Now, this is after police have arrived on the scene. So we have EMTs on the scene, then police on the scene. Robert is removed from the scene. Police are trying to assess what took place here. Detectives are talking to the 3 men that live at the townhouse. And sadly, while this is going on, Robert Wone is pronounced dead.
We want to thank everybody for joining us here in the garage. Join us for part 2. And until then,
be good, be kind, don't litter.